Hey, this is Scott from Cloak, and you're watching RichardMetalFan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Richard Metal Fan Interviews. This is episode number 41, and I'm currently driving to my interview. I have one in Decatur. I'm interviewing my buddy Scott Taysom. He is the vocalist and guitarist for Atlanta black and metal, doom metal band Cloak. I'm going to be talking about his journey for music from where he began to now, as well as like going through the albums, songwriting, lyrics, and hopefully talk about some new Cloak music coming soon. So let's go talk to Scott. So what's up, guys? I am here at my buddy Scott Taysom from Cloak's house. He invited me to his humble abode to do an interview. So how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. Just, Saturday, pretty good weather. Just hanging out with my dog, basically.
That's so awesome. The drive took forever to get down here because traffic was a bitch on Saturday. It was like they were doing like road work and shit. Like really, they couldn't do it at night.
Yeah, it's typical Atlanta for you.
Yeah. So basically this format is I want to kind of go through your catalog as well as your musical journey from where you started to today. But let's just dive right back into the very beginning. What were the first bands that got you into metal and what made you want to start playing guitar?
Well, I actually started listening to more punk, when I was 5 or 6. I had an older brother, 4 years older than me, and, the Black album was really popular at that time. Still, it was like 95, 96. So, that kind of mid-era Metallica stuff. So, that was kind of my introduction to heavy rock. And I mean, just what was on the radio at that time was heavy rock and Metallica and the grunge stuff. And so that was kind of the first exposure to it. And then, I got into when I was 8 or 9, I got into like Korn and bands like that. So those were kind of like the first heavy bands. And then when I was in 6th or 7th grade, my brother's friend showed me AFI, and that kind of like changed the kind of like path of my life at that time. And I got really into them and just other kind of like skate punk bands at the time, like NoFX and bands like that. But AFI always kind of had that like dark gothic edge to them, which I really stuck with me even up till today.
I loved AFI. I remember playing Miss Murder on like Guitar Hero or something. Yeah. That's my favorite song from them.
Yeah, and I got into them before even Sing the Sorrow came. It was just before Sing the Sorrow came out. So I was Black Sails was like my Bible in 7th grade. That and Art of Drowning, and then Sing the Sorrow came out, and that was the first show I ever went to was the Sing the Sorrow tour in 2003. I think I was freshly 13. It was at the Old Masquerade, and wow. It was awesome. It was amazing. So that was my exposure to shows, and it was when he still had the gothic like long hair, and it was great. But yeah, so I mean, and then I got into like street punk bands, like things go fast in life when you're young. So it was like that was my shit in middle school, and then like later middle school was like the Casualties, and then I got into like a lot of the street punk stuff, and then like a year after that I got into the UK punk stuff like Discharge and Conflict, GBH, and then after that it was that was my thing for a while, and I played in a punk band all the way from 8th grade until like freshman year of college. But later high school, I think I was the kind of like shift in, I really got into thrash metal. My brother gave me Metallica Kill 'Em All as a Christmas gift, and so that made me kind of revisit Metallica's earlier catalog, and I got like obsessed with that album, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, still some of my favorite albums.
One of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, I'd say Master is probably my favorite Metallica. But
same here. It's like my 3rd favorite album of all time.
Yeah, and I mean Kill 'Em All still has a really special place in my heart too. But I got into that, and I really got into early Slayer. I picked up Rain and Blood, and then I got super into Show No Mercy, which, I mean, those are still my, some of my favorite albums. I got into everything basically up to Seasons, and I still listen to that shit all the time. It's still the best. So that was the shift. And then early college, I got into black metal. and I got into Dissection heavily. I saw
the Lights Playing flag you got right there.
Yeah, I mean, probably my favorite album of all time. That that album is super important to me.
They're very underrated too. I don't think really anybody talks about Dissection a whole lot.
So it depends what circles you're in, I guess. In ours they definitely do, but I see what you mean though. So I got into Somberlane first, and then I got into, I used to go in order, so I got into those first two, and I mean I love Reign Chaos too, but Dissection was the shift for me, and then I got into all the Norwegian stuff. I would go Gorgoroth, Burzum, Mayhem, Dark Throne, and early Satyricon, and I mean that's been my thing. I've been revisiting a lot of the classics, like for the past couple of years. I've delved heavily back into a lot of those classics, and I've been rebuying the repressings of those Norwegian black metal records. So I mean that's like, those bands that I mentioned are still some of my favorites. And I got into bands like, I'm picky with death metal, but I got into Entombed, I got into Death and Repugnant, newer death metal bands that were coming out of Scandinavia, not Scandinavia, but Europe in general, like Venenum, the German band, Vorm out of Finland. So bands like that. But yeah, I mean that was kind of that was my journey, and I listen to music. It doesn't matter what kind of music. I listen to everything that inspired me in my life. So I still listen to AFI all the time. I still listen to Dissection all the time. It's partly some old bands I'll get, like really old bands I'll go back for nostalgic sake and just listen to that. But I mean, the bands I mentioned still inspire me today. So.
Awesome. So I was doing my research from Metal Archives. I believe your first band pre-Cloak was called Skanka.
No, Skanka. So that was my first band. I had a lot of bands. And my first band was called Nothing Lost, and that was in 8th grade up to freshman year of college. And it evolved. It started out kind of I have all my demos still. We weren't good, but it was our first band. And then we got pretty good in high school, and then up in early college. And then I actually started a crust band called In Ruins. That was kind of, I don't know if you know the band Tragedy, but
the name sounds familiar.
Yeah, it was similar to that. So it was basically a metal punk band. Cause I forgot to mention that I got really into a lot of that metal punk crust stuff, like Sacrilege and Amoebics. I mean, I still love those bands too, but, so that was my first In Ruins was my first gateway into heavy singing, heavy music. We tuned down to a C standard, and that was my first heavy vocal. I have I'll give you a record. I have a bunch of those still because I didn't really sell that many.
Ooh, me likey. I get an exclusive.
That was 2009 to 2011, 12. So it was it had a little bit of melodic black metal inspiration in there because I was heavily into that as well at the time. But anyway, so these are kind of my main bands I mentioned because I was in Skanka was a side band I did for a couple months. But after In Ruins, I did a band called Paradox, and it was a lot more raw, stripped down, early Anti-Semics and Discharge meets a lot of the Japanese punk at the time, Crasher Crust punk at the time. But and then after that is when me and Sean started jamming with Cloak. The idea of Cloak in 2014, and it was a lot different. It was a lot more death metal, a lot more Bastard Priests, Repugnant, early Entombed, and then we were jamming with Max, the guitarist that we still have in the band at the time, but it was. It was loose. It was just kind of us figuring out. We had another guy named Nate that was jamming with us, and no, actually that was as early as that was 2013. So that was kind of the first version of Cloak, I guess. And then we kind of changed the sound a little bit as we went, and we were jamming more in 2014, and then Sean had a second kid, so he was wrapped up in that for a bit, and I was singing in a death metal band called Haunting that I was asked to join. Yeah. So, and then the way that Cloak, it's really odd, and it's the way that Cloak like came about as it is today is it's almost fate in my eyes, because so we did Haunting for a little bit, and then we did a reunion show, and which is funny because it wasn't like a big band or anything. It was just like people in Atlanta liked it. So we did like one show, and as our last show, and Sean came in to no, let me think about this. Sorry. Sean did play that last show with us. No, but before Haunting split, Sean came in to start playing drums with Haunting. And then we just didn't like the dynamic of the band at the time. And he was finally just like, let's just do what we were doing with the Cloak idea. So, and that was late 2014 into early 2015. So Cloak, as we know it today, officially started in 2015 of March. So it's been 7 years now. It was right when I moved into this house, and the practice space is in the basement still. And so yeah, that was kind of the journey of how we started doing Cloak. And we brought in Max. He was originally going to play bass, and we brought in that guy Nate to play guitar. Nate left. We brought in Max's friend Matt, and he was our first bassist on our first record. And then he left, and then we got Billy. So it's funny how it all came about, but like one thing always leads to another in life, and this. So I mean, this is kind of I consider Cloak my life's work in a way, because it's everything that added up to what I became as a musical artist, all kind of into one. And it's to me the best expression that I could do, because there's really like no limits on what Cloak can be. We have our ideas what it needs to be, but so it's definitely the best way for me and probably the rest of the guys to express ourselves.
All right. And most cliche interview question ever: why did you call the band name Cloak?
Sean came up with it. It fit. It's really the best way to describe it. We needed a name, and it just fit at the time. So.
Right. Yeah. And then 2015, you did your first release, which is a demo in 2015. How did that whole thing come to be? Because I think it was 2 songs.
Yeah, it was In the Darkness, the Path, and The Hunger. Those are just some of the earlier songs we wrote, and I recorded them with my, shitty gear in my basement. But I like that demo still. I think we have like 3 recordings of those 2 songs, because it was just our early stuff, and I like the demo a lot. I didn't really know how I wanted to sing for Cloak yet, so it was just super raw and dark. I have another version of In the Darkness, the Path, that I want to just release as like, just put it on Instagram and our Facebook. It's super just dark, and I mean, I recorded it, I did the vocals by candlelight in the like unfinished area of my basement, and it was super, the early version of Cloak, it was just super moody, and we really created the atmosphere in the band room every time, and we still do that. But there's something about the initiation of something at the beginning of a process that's pure magic, and it really was. I look back to that time of starting what is Cloak now, and it's just, there was a magical atmosphere around it. That's the only way I can describe it. It was like a cult. It really was. And a cult of 4 people in it, and in a way, I mean, it still is, but there's just something very special about those early years.
Yeah, and then 2016, you did the Saltile EP, which is basically the same 2 songs, but you just re-recorded them.
Yeah.
Then I guess you just wanted to make it more to production, a bit better.
Yeah, and it was a bigger production on that. Not my favorite production, but it has a bigness to it, so it's just those same 2 songs.
Right. So from 2016 to 2017, were you like touring a little bit, or just playing locally in Atlanta?
Mostly locally, some out-of-state shows. We didn't start really touring heavily until 18, going into 19. But we did our first tour for the Venomous album in late 17.
Yeah, and then you got signed to Season of Mist Records. How did they find you guys?
We had a friend, Greg, that worked at the label, and he we were we were somewhat friendly online and everything, and he just really dug the band and showed it to Michael, the head of season. And I mean, we really got lucky because we got signed before our first record came out. You know, our first actual record was on season because of the EP. Not many bands can say that. You know, that's a label that a lot of bands get on with their fourth, fifth, sixth record. But yeah, we're really lucky in that regard. And I mean, I don't think it's just luck. I think, you know, he told me specifically liked the way that the EP sounded. He liked our band pictures. He liked the package that the band presented. And it was, I mean, we did all that stuff in a very, we knew what we were doing when we were releasing. We knew what we wanted to do when we were doing, you know, our own little press packages online. We weren't sending it out to anybody. We just were, you know, we released a band picture before the songs came out, and we released the songs, and we played our first show. So we had, you know, we had everything built up. We didn't just play a show randomly and not have any songs out. So we wanted to build it up.
Right. I remember first seeing you guys like at the tail end of that cycle. You opened up for Tribulation at the Masquerade.
Yeah, 2018.
October 11th, 2018, if memory serves me right. Something like that.
Yeah, that was our first, or no, it was after our first record came out. But it was a cool show.
Yeah. But then I didn't really think much of it then, but then after a while it just clicked with me, and then of course I'm a fan of y'all since. But then moving on to 2019, you released The Burning Dawn, your second album. Now, usually when bands release a second album, it's a lot of like pressure and everything. Did you feel like a lot of pressure following up to Venomous Depths?
Sort of. I mean, we had, you know, 9 months to sit. Venomous got mastered and sent to the plant in March of 17. So we had 9 months to just sit before it came out in, you know, like 8 or 9 months. It came out in November of 17. So we were trying to write songs in that time, and it was just a lot of like failures. Because I think you need to have a record come out, sit with it, do that cycle before you start to just get ahead of yourself and write new songs, or else it's going to sound like the last record. So shit didn't really start to click with songwriting until 2018 for Dawn. And we wanted a little more of a stripped down, like to the point, a little less long songs on that record. And then, yeah, I mean, once it started going, it started really kind of firing off, you know, with our songwriting. But I in that time, I learned how to record my own demos, you know, so I really could like sit with the stuff and do. We're sitting in the studio room now that I kind of built. This is where I essentially write all this, you know, most of the songs. So it's nice to be able to have that workspace where you can sit with yourself for a little bit, and then you take it to the practice room. And, you know, things still grow in the practice room a lot. But me as a songwriter, I like to sit with it for a little bit by myself.
Now, does like inspiration sort of like come out of nowhere, or do you need to like put yourself in like a mind frame or a certain situation?
I think if I force it, it's not going to be good. I think it does kind of come out of nowhere sometimes.
You can't half-ass it.
Yeah. No, I mean, the details on our songs can be pretty grueling, especially on the record that we're doing now. There's a lot of details. So yeah, you kind of have to. And being able to demo and add things as you go. I mean, even just, you know, like adding, you know, choir tracks and things like that to it. It helps you figure out what you want to do on the vocals and the guitar and the bass. So,
yeah. And as a vocalist, do you need to like hear music in order to come up with lyrics, or do you usually have like a lyrical concept in mind and that can help determine the outcome of the music itself?
I do lyrics after the music. So I write to the songs. I used to, growing up, you know, with my early punk bands, I would write the lyrics first, but I've learned that I think about the time when I did that band in Ruins, I started writing more to the song, and I think that helps me.
Yeah, it would be heartbreaking to have the best set of lyrics and they go like one syllable over the arrangement.
Yeah, it's just, to me, I can't work that way. The song kind of gives me the feeling of what the lyrics need to be. So
awesome. And also kind of like you're also playing guitar. Do you ever have to like practice how you do the vocals and play guitar?
Yeah, definitely. I have to make sure that now that I demo, I record the vocals to the demo track as I go. But I need to be able to sit with the guitar first and be like, okay, I can sing that while I play it, or else, because we're a live band, so I need to be able to do all of it live, obviously. And I'm not James Hetfield. I mean, that guy. That guy can play the craziest shit on rhythm and then sing to a different rhythm. Like if you watch his hand.
All that down picking.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't. Not as good as him, but not many people are.
Yeah, I mean, you can only try. Now I'm kind of like going to playing live, because is there like a similar energy to playing live as to playing on CD, or they're almost kind of like two separate entities?
Yeah, there's definitely a different energy. Like I said, I think we're a live band. I think a lot of that energy gets projected live, and the goal for this current record that we're working on is to get that live energy captured. So I mean, it's hard for bands to do that. I mean, so many bands. You see them live and it's just like massive, and then the record kind of sounds like a little thin. So it's that's definitely two different experiences.
And of course, you play with like a variety of different bands. Like I know you played with like Tribulation, just sort of like a doomy kind of black metal, kind of similar to you guys. But then you also played with Goat Horror, which is more just extreme, and then 1349, which is straight up black metal. But do you ever notice like a different crowd reaction depending on the tours that you're on?
Sort of. We're always honestly the odd man out. When we did Goat Horror, they were obviously more just to the point, and then we did Uada in 1349, and that was probably our best tour. We got a good reaction, but yeah, I mean, we're a little more, at least the songs at that time were a little more rock based metal, I guess. So it was different than just like blast the whole time, like 1349.
Yeah, try to like maybe next tour you could like tour with like the most like pop mainstream rock band, tour with Nickelback.
I don't know if that would work, but
Hey Chad, hook them up.
Yeah, I mean, I if we opened for like Ghost, I don't think that'd be too out of place, but
Hey, Ghost is awesome. I know people shit on them, but fuck it, I like them.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, and of course you're currently working on new music. How's the whole like compositions and stuff coming along with that?
So it's been a longer process than we intended. So we started writing that record basically when the pandemic started. I was working on it a little before that, just ideas on my own. But so basically all of 2020, half of 2021 basically, and then we hit the studio in August 21, and then we did a tour in the middle of that, so that kind of slowed things down. And then the holidays hit and there was traveling. So it's almost done. I'm finishing up the vocals next week, and then we need to do a couple things with synthesizer tracks, and then it's down to mixing and then the master. It's probably not going to come out until 23, unfortunately, just because the plants are incredibly backed up due to all the COVID stuff.
That's fair enough. But and two more questions for you. It's kind of like going back to the songwriting, because you have like different song lengths. You have one song that's like 3 or 4 minutes, and you have one that's like 7 or 8 minutes. But how do you know when a song is done?
You just know. I mean, we've never aimed to write a really, like Deep Red, the closer on the first record, is 10 minutes. We weren't like, let's write a really long song. It just kind of happened. We wrote longer songs at that time too. I think most of the new ones are all most of them are below 6 on the new record, but I think the closer is maybe like 6.5, 7. But yeah, you just know. Usually the last songs on our records are the longest, like on Dawn, Where the Horrors Thrive was the longest. And then
try to end everything on like a big note.
Yeah, I think the closer of albums should be pretty big, so.
All right. The final question I wanted to ask is coming from Atlanta to our home state. I feel like Atlanta has like a different scene. Like, of course, Cloak's but also diverse. Like Cloak's different from a band like Mastodon. That's different from a band like Left to Suffer. I just think Atlanta has like a diverse metal scene. So, is there like a scene here that you felt part of, or was it the goal for Cloak to get outside of Atlanta and play in front of different states and stuff?
Yeah, definitely the latter. I think the goal was never to be a local. I did not want to be a local metal band in Atlanta. I think a lot of bands in no matter what city just kind of stick locally, and that's not what I wanted to do. I'd been doing that, basically well, not really, because I toured with a lot of my punk bands, but I just see a lot of bands that don't get out of Atlanta, and to me, I just don't want to do that. I think it's pointless. But you need the local bands too. But and I love playing locally. But we wanted to be a touring band for sure. We wanted to get out and hit cities outside of Atlanta as much as we can, and then eventually get over to across to Europe. So.
Yeah. So before we go, I just want to thank you so much for this interview. Is just anything else with Cloak that you'd like to promote? I mean, you obviously say no music till 23, but is there any shows that we can expect soon? Yeah,
we have some tours coming up in the spring, summer. So spring and early summer. So look out for those, and then obviously look out for the new record when it starts to get promoted, which will probably be by the end of this year, and then kind of drifting into next year.
Awesome. So thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Hey, everybody, Scott from Cloak. We'll see you next time.